this is homework help for Math 107 second homework assignment. So this starts off with a break-even analysis, and the first thing you have to do is, given this information, you have to write the cost and revenue functions for the business. The revenue function, you can use R, is equal to the price that you charge times the number that you sell. So usually use, I'll just put number here. So you could write the price here, and you could use X for the number that you sell. Right now, that of course is going to vary. So when you look through here, it tells you they sell the recap tires for $89 a set. That means the revenue is going to be $89 times X. So if I sell 2 sets, you can see what I get if I sell 10, right? Now the cost. Okay, cost has 2 parts. It has fixed cost, which I'll call F. That's like your rent, etc. That's a C, by the way. And then it has a variable cost. And the fixed costs, again, are your rent, your manager's salary, what you have to pay even if you don't do any business. The variable costs are what it costs you per item to make, buy, or whatever, prepare for sale. So let's look up here, and it says the fixed cost, so you're giving them right here, for rent and utilities and the manager's salary, that comes to $1,400. So $1,400 goes here for the fixed costs. Now, every set of tires they recap, it costs them $75 to recap them. There you go. That's your revenue function, and that's your cost function. So I clean that up so that we can write these again. So it's 89 times X. That's my revenue function. Here's my cost function, $1,400 plus 75X. Now find the break-even point. Right, that has to do a little bit with graphing, or the idea of a graph. Here's my graph. This is the number sold, and this is the money I brought in. Now on this graph, I can graph both the revenue and the cost. So when X is 0, my revenue is 0, and I would have to get some other points, but I'm just going to sketch this in for you. Okay, so that would be my revenue. The slope of this line is 89. It starts off at the origin. The more I sell, the more revenue I get. Now look at the cost. When X is 0, what are the costs? $1,400. That's because you have to pay those costs even if you don't do any business. Now let's compare the slopes. This has a slope of 89. This has a slope of only 75. That's because you were smart enough to charge more for your tires than it takes you to recap them. All right. So if this is a slope of 89, say the cost also, say it costs you 89 per tire, then this would be a parallel line. Well, it's not very parallel, but that's hardly parallel. This is if it cost you more to recap them than it cost you to sell them. But if it was parallel, if it was the same cost, these lines would be parallel and they'd never cross. However, this has a flatter slope at 75, so I'm going to change color here, and I'll draw that cost function. It's a little bit flatter, and this is my cost function in red. This point where they match is the break-even point, and you should find both the X value, that's mainly what you want, but you also should find the money, okay, the value, and it'll be the same both on the revenue and cost. See, this point is shared by both of those, and it's called the break-even point, because down here you're losing money. If you stay in this range, you've got to pay more out in rent and expenses than you even bring in. Over here, once you pass the break-even point, at which you just break even, you're not really seeing any gain. Over here, you are going to have a gain because your costs are less than the revenue that you're bringing in. So this is a lossy region, this is a region of gain, and this is your break-even point. Now that line is on both of these. They both are money. The easy way to do it is just to set revenue equal to cost and solve for X. Then you can put X back into the equation and find this value. As far as graphing the two functions, you use graph paper, and I'm thinking the homework sets, it's now embedded in there, so you have to use a graph paper. but you'll draw curves just like I showed you already. You'll make the vertical axis your money axis. This is the number sold. You draw a line for the revenue. Well, say here's your break-even point, which you computed, then the revenue has to go through that break-even point, but it starts at 0. Here's your revenue function. Your cost function starts at the whatever the fixed costs were. I think they were $1,400. Okay, and it also goes to this point, so your cost function looks like that, and you'll have a graph similar to that. That would be your graph, and this will clearly show the break-even point. Now let's talk about profit. Profit, which can be a loss or a gain, is revenue, the amount you bring in, minus your costs, minus your bills. That makes sense? Okay, and I'm going to try to doctor up this horrible graph with profit. Okay, if I subtract these numbers, what do I get? Look at x equals 0. When x equals 0, the revenue is 0, but the cost was $1,400. In other words, you start $1,400 in the hole. Okay, what happens at break-even? At break-even, revenue equals costs. Okay, so the profit, which is R minus C, is going to be 0. At this point, profit 0. Well, there we go. Okay, and so your profit will look something like this. You see, you're negative down here where you're at a loss. Up here, it's a gain, and so now your profit is positive. I'm going to make a hopefully not vain attempt to draw a better graph. Okay, so this is going to be my money axis. The vertical axis will be the money axis, and this direction will be the number sold. So you should label your axes. This is positive. That's money axis, and this is X, number sold. Okay, on here I have 3 lines. The first line I have is a revenue equation. Oh, that was supposed to go blue, but it didn't. Okay, there's my revenue. So I label that with an R for revenue. Now I'm going to have a cost. Remember, the cost is going to start here at the fixed cost. Oh, it didn't change color for me. Let me go up here. Alright, it wants to be purple, so I'll just let it be purple. Here was my break-even point. Say this is the break-even point right here, which you have calculated. Now, the cost starts there, and it also goes to that point. Okay, so here's my cost. Now when I go to draw the profit, then the value that was here, your fixed costs, you start out here the negative of them. So this is your fixed cost here, and this becomes minus the fixed cost right here, because that's where you are financially. Also, you know the following: at break-even point, revenue equals cost, so your profit's 0. And this gives you your profit. Look back here. Sometimes it lets me change it on the fly, and now it doesn't seem to want to let me change it at all. Okay, enough of that. It'll be purple. Those are your 3. Break-even point. At break-even point, your profit's 0. When you start off at x equals 0, before you've sold anything, you have no revenue. That's this point. You still have to pay your rent, so you have the fixed costs, and you are essentially in the hole, your fixed costs.